Hey everyone, welcome back. We are diving into something super important today, but it's kind of a sensitive topic too.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at early signs of autism in babies.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And, we want to be really clear right up front
Right.
that we're not trying to freak anyone out or get people worried or anything like that. Every baby develops differently.
Exactly.
And what we're talking about today is really just about giving parents information,
Absolutely.
and awareness.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
So think of this as like a starting point
Okay.
for understanding, the beautiful spectrum
Yeah.
of early development
Yeah.
and what that can look like.
Empowering parents, not causing undue anxiety. That's the goal.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So let's imagine that, like classic heartwarming image.
Yeah.
A baby can get into their parents' eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. Heart melts every time.
It's like the best.
Yeah.
Right. But sometimes, that kind of consistent eye contact, it's not quite there.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, as a parent myself,
Yeah.
that can feel a little concerning.
Yeah. It's natural to wonder about it, right?
Right.
Like eye contact, it's not just about looking at someone. It's much deeper than that.
Right.
It's really the foundation for social connection and bonding.
Wow.
And for babies, those early interactions, they actually set the stage for all their future relationships.
Oh, wow. So it's like really fundamental.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not even just like the amount of eye contact, right?
Right.
Like, did you know there are actually different types of smiles?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Babies have those reflexive smiles, like early on. They just kind of, happen spontaneously.
Right.
But then you get those social smiles, the ones that are like directed at a person.
Right.
Those are a big deal. Those show that the baby is starting to, engage with the world in like a social way.
So like a real smile.
Exactly. A real connection.
Wow, that's so cool.
It is.
Okay. So let's say you're calling your baby's name and nothing. Like no response.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to be kind of unnerving.
Yeah, it can be a little bit concerning for sure. You see, responding to their name, that's actually a really important developmental milestone.
Okay.
And it usually emerges around like 6 to 9 months.
Okay.
And it's a sign, basically, that the baby's beginning to understand language and their own identity.
So like they realize that they're like a person, a separate being.
They're like, hey, I'm here.
Yeah, it's me.
Exactly.
That's wild. And so these milestones, like why are they so important?
Well, developmental milestones, they're kind of like a roadmap for understanding a baby's progress. They help us see if a baby's developing skills, within a typical time frame.
Okay.
So we're talking about things like pointing, babbling, those first words.
Oh, yeah.
Even things like rolling over or sitting up.
Right.
Each of these skills actually builds on the one before it.
Oh, wow. That's super interesting.
Yeah.
So some babies, they hit these milestones a little early.
Of course, yeah.
Some a little later. But what if those communication delays, like what if those seem to be kind of like persistent?
Yeah.
Does that always mean autism?
Not necessarily. But it is definitely something to pay attention to.
Okay.
Especially when you start noticing other things, too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, a baby's use of gestures.
Oh, right. Those like adorable little waves and points and reaches. My little one, they used to point at absolutely everything. Like, look, mama, a bird. Look, mama, a leaf. Look, mama.
It's all about communication.
Yeah.
Babies use those gestures long before they can actually speak.
Right, of course.
But, babies with autism, they might use fewer gestures or develop them later. Or even, they might communicate in other ways, like through echolalia, for instance.
Echolalia? Is that like an echo?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's basically the repetition of words or phrases.
Yeah.
And while it might seem unusual to some, for some autistic children, echolalia is actually a way of connecting, learning language, and even expressing themselves.
That's so interesting. Like, it really kind of challenges the way we typically think about communication.
It does, right?
It really does.
And speaking of like unique ways of experiencing the world, let's talk about repetitive behaviors. I remember my nephew, he used to like flap his hands like a little bird when he got excited.
Yeah, repetitive movements, they're pretty common in babies.
Okay. It can be a way of, self-soothing or expressing excitement or even frustration. But with autism, these behaviors might be like more intense.
Okay.
Or more frequent.
Okay.
Sometimes to the point where they actually interfere with play.
Oh, wow.
Or interaction.
So like they kind of get stuck in a loop.
In a way, yeah. And these repetitions, they're not just limited to movements either.
Oh, okay.
Think about a baby who's like completely captivated by like the way light reflects off a spinning toy.
Right.
That kind of intense focus on specific interests. It's another thing we often see.
Okay. And these like sensory differences, can those also influence how babies with autism, like how they play?
Absolutely.
I remember those early days with my kids, and it was all peekaboo and sharing toys.
It's the best.
But what if a baby seems to like prefer playing alone?
Well, solitary play is actually important for all babies.
Sure, of course.
But you're right, it can be more pronounced in babies with autism.
Okay.
They might not show as much interest in like those classic social games.
Right.
Or even in sharing toys, even when you try to encourage it.
Okay. So we've talked about social interaction, communication, repetitive behaviors, and how all these things can look a little different in babies with autism. But where does like sensory sensitivity fit into all of this? I mean, I think we all have like those.
We all have our quirks.
Little sensory quirks, right? Like, I cannot stand the sound of nails on a chalkboard.
Oh, yeah.
Ugh.
Me neither.
But for babies with autism, those sensitivities can be like a lot more intense.
Yeah, absolutely. Some babies might be hypersensitive to sounds or lights or even textures.
Okay.
So, for example, like a vacuum cleaner might sound like a jet engine to them.
Oh, wow.
Or a tag on a shirt might feel like unbearably scratchy.
That really makes you think about, those everyday experiences that most of us just take for granted.
Right, exactly.
And if a parent is noticing some of these signs, it's natural for them to, feel concerned.
Right, of course.
But does it automatically mean their child is autistic?
No, not at all. Early development is a spectrum, and there's a really wide range of what's considered typical.
Okay.
So if you have concerns, the most important thing is to trust your instincts.
Okay.
You know your baby best.
So what's the best way for a parent to address those concerns?
Yeah.
Where do they even start?
Well, the first step is really simple. Just talk to your pediatrician.
Okay.
Or your healthcare provider. They can observe your baby. They can ask you questions about their development, and then they can recommend next steps.
So it's not even necessarily about just looking for the signs.
Right.
It's about having that open communication with your child's doctor.
Absolutely. And then, depending on the situation, they might suggest developmental screenings or even refer you to a specialist for like a more in-depth evaluation.
I know that word evaluation can sound like scary.
I know.
But it's really just about getting a clearer picture of your child's development.
Exactly. It's about understanding their strengths and their challenges.
Right.
And then, if autism is identified, early intervention can make a world of difference.
Wow.
It's about providing that support and the resources that can empower children to develop skills and to thrive.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So to kind of wrap things up today, we've explored some potential early signs of autism in babies, focusing on social interaction, communication, those fascinating repetitive behaviors, and the often overlooked world of sensory sensitivities.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But this is really just, the tip of the iceberg.
It is, yeah.
Every child is unique, and their development unfolds in its own time.
This deep dive is really meant to just spark awareness and give you a starting point for understanding this complex and beautiful spectrum.
It is.
It is.
So here's something I think we should all ponder as we, continue on this journey. How can we create an environment that celebrates the unique ways
that's the question
in which all children develop? I think that's a question worth asking ourselves.
Absolutely.
Both as parents and as a society. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
On this deep dive.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.